Good afternoon. Welcome to the December 1st, 2020 meeting of the Town Council Charter Review Committee. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, this meeting is being videotaped and audio recorded, as well as being remotely broadcasted via a Zoom webinar. If there is anyone in our viewing audience who is taping this meeting, would you please announce yourself? Seeing and hearing none. Who would love to take minutes?
I'm going to do it this time, Larry.
Thank you, Mr. Andy. And let me just make sure who we have. 3, 6, 7. Who are we missing? Ralph. Oh, Ralph is there.
I'm here.
Am I missing anyone?
You're not counting yourself.
Oh, that's why. Okay. So Marilyn, can you be an advisor?
Right.
Thank you. Okay. We have minutes from the meeting of November 24th, 2020, presented by Mr. Christensen. Do I hear a motion to approve? What's that?
Motion to accept.
Thank you, Phil. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I don't know, who was that?
I'll
All right, Bill?
second it. Yeah.
Okay, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, Ralph?
Yes.
Larry, yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes. Oh,
Bill?
yes. Well,
Good.
we're all set.
Andy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Good. So that's approved. Okay, we had left off last week with Pat Henry's comments. And before we get there, Dr. Christensen is going to analyze the words full council within the charter and whether we should revisit the fact that we defeated a motion by Dr. Adams to change the wording. And
Thanks, Larry.
go ahead.
Thanks for entrusting me with that too, by the way. I appreciate it. I mean, it's in there a half a dozen times. I think we're okay. I don't know if you want to go through all of them or what.
Well, I tried to highlight them as well, but
Okay.
if you say there are half a dozen, you know I missed some.
Well, the first one's on page 3, the definition, obviously, which.
Yep.
The second one is page 5, section 3, which is the president, vice president, and the wording is at which a full council is present.
And before you go on with the others, that particular issue we have discussed in the past. And we said that that's our organizational meeting, and they would need the full complement of 7 based on the wording to elect a president and vice president. And we had decided that we knew of that potential delay, and we were okay with that.
Mhm.
I'm not speaking out of turn, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, Tom, proceed, please.
Page 6, the second paragraph, a majority of the full council shall constitute a quorum for the purpose of conducting business.
Mhm.
I think that's, I don't know that there's any reason to think that needs to be changed.
Marilyn?
Am I allowed to speak even though I'm not allowed to vote?
I think so. This is still democracy.
Okay, through the chair, I'd like to ask Tom, when you went through each section and looked at the words full council, did you try to get into the heads of the Charter Commission as to why that one word is in front of council? for that particular, request or issue. I mean, it's not that the town council will meet, it's the full council.
Right. So I think, and this topic keeps coming up, I think the reason for it is most of them are for votes. And so they want to make sure that the number of total votes is always 7 when doing the math. So majority is always 4, even if there's 6 people, because there's a vacancy. A majority is always 4, or a supermajority is always the number. So when you're dividing the numerator and the denominator is always 7, right?
That's how I think it. But then you all voted against it when Phil made the motion, and I agreed with Phil, and everyone else said no, as to the full council would be 7 members. So I'm trying to figure it out like the rest of us are.
Because I think, like I said, it's just there for the purpose. If you put the 7 in the definition, then it makes it seem like there has to be 7 people there. When in
Well,
actuality, you're just saying it's 7 spots.
Yeah, I don't think they necessarily have to be 7 people. It's just that the full council is 7 people.
Yeah, I get you. Right.
Yeah, that's what I think that they're trying to say. I mean, you could have 5 people and you still need a vote of 4 because the full council is 7. So if you had 2 vacancies and only 5 people were there, you'd still need 4 in order to get something passed. I think that's the way they interpret it.
Well, I'll throw a monkey wrench into that particular point. If you have 7 members authorized and you have 1 vacancy, then you have, or no, let's just say you have 7 seats with 7 people. And at the meeting, you have 4 counselors show up. And you have a regular motion on the floor. How many people have to vote in favor of a motion? Before you answer, go back to the definition sections
Majority.
and look at the wording for majority vote.
Majority of those present.
Say it
Yeah, right.
again?
Majority of those present.
That's correct.
Yes.
And that's
Okay.
what it was meant to say.
And so, if
And then you go back to the paragraph that Tom just spoke to regarding a quorum. So you need 4 counselors present to open a meeting and conduct business. So if you only had 4, you'd have to have 3 voting in favor rather than 4 of 7. And I think that's the way the commission intended it to happen.
So
Yes, Bill?
You hit the nail on the head, because that's what we talked about.
Okay,
Because you don't even have to talk about a vacancy. It can be 3 counselors are sick or absent. You still need 4 to conduct business, but a majority vote is 3, not 4.
now I wasn't going to bring up the next issue because it's too anal and too lawyer-like, but in the definitional section is about majority vote being a majority of those present and voting, but that's in a definitional section rather than in an implementation under the powers and duties under Article 2. You follow the difference?
Larry, let me just point something out. With that sentence that you read, it
Yeah.
said, unless another provision is made by charter, by bylaw, or by its own rules. Now, when you come to reorganize the charter, the president and vice president, you have to have the full council there.
That's correct.
4 people cannot meet.
That's correct.
So that's why I think it says unless other provision is made by the charter, bylaws, or by its own rules. That's where I think they're saying that in order to do the important stuff, you need a full council. And that's why I think they made the definition of full council, because there's certain things that they wanted to make sure were passed with everyone involved in that process.
Correct. You're correct. The only thing I'd point out is the definitional section defines what majority vote is. But then you go to Article 2, Section 4, Council Procedures. It never states about the normal votes that are taken rather than votes that require a supermajority. Am I making, is it clear enough what I'm saying? And I never thought about that even when the Charter Commission was meeting. That you have a definitional section, that's fine. But then do you need wording within, in this case, Article 2 or even Article 3 for the school committee says that the same thing. Votes other than those requiring supermajority require a majority vote. So, Jeannie?
Yep.
So Larry,
Yep.
go ahead. If I may for 1 second.
Uh-huh.
So your majority vote in the definition
Yep.
is in connection with a multiple member body.
Right.
Council is not considered a multiple member body. If you go down to the definition of multiple member body, it explicitly excludes town council and the school committee.
Oh,
Where are you, Ralph?
multiple member body definitions.
Yeah.
Good
That's a
pickup.
good point.
Talking
Where
about
are you,
subcommittees.
Ralph?
So under definitions,
Yeah.
if you look under multiple member body, which is page 3, the
Yeah,
very
page
last
3.
definition,
Right.
town council in the last sentence and school committee is excluded. They are not considered multiple member bodies.
Okay.
So your majority vote doesn't include the town council or the school committee.
So that even,
I think
that
that
has a
clarifies
greater
it.
impact than what I just said,
Well, no, because you need a quorum.
right, to start business.
Exactly. And
But
if
once
you
you start the business, where does it say you need a majority vote to pass a motion? For town council or school committee?
I would assume state law would say that under a quorum.
I looked, I couldn't find it.
How about Robert's rule? How about
I was
Robert's
just
rules?
thinking Robert's rules.
I'm
Robert's
presuming that's the way it's always been done, under Robert's rules. And so I'm just going to remove my concern.
And so I'm going to jump in with one other thing, Larry.
Yes, sir.
When we were talking under the full council,
Uh-huh.
I believe my interpretation of notwithstanding any vacancy and all was incorrect.
Oh,
I've gone back through. When we did it under the charter, I was thinking if one person had quit and we only had 6 members, that covered it. After rereading and going through definitions of words and all, I found that I'm incorrect. What I interpret that to mean now is 7 members is the full council. Even if someone's missing, it's 7 members.
Wow.
I did a lot of research, okay? Wikipedia is awesome.
Was that research or soul searching?
A little bit of both, okay?
okay.
I
Yeah,
felt
I-
promotion.
Yes,
My
Tom.
notes. I
So-
took out my 2 tubs of charter stuff and I went back through them, and I actually had a note that said full council equals 7 members and circled. And so I stand corrected.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
good.
that word was tripping it. I think Larry explained it right last time, and when he said even if, that's what
Right.
that word means. Even if
Right.
there's a vacancy, it's still 7. So
Right.
all these the places that they say full council are for a bylaw,
Uh-huh.
a vacancy, town manager appointment, and school committee appointment to replace a vacancy. So basically, the point is they wanted 4 votes, no matter how many people were there that night, because those things were big enough that there needed to be a majority vote of the full council, which was 7.
Tom, can you
Where-
repeat those 4 again?
Yeah, Tom, where did you find it in bylaw?
Okay, that is page
Oh, yeah.
7. 1, 2, 3,
Yep, I
4,
see it.
5th
Yep.
paragraph down.
Yep.
And then further down, section 8, for the vacancy, same thing, majority vote of the full council.
Yep.
It's not, the crux of it is, it sounds like for those important issues, they wanted 4 votes.
Yep.
It didn't matter who was there.
Good work.
Okay. Have we squeezed enough juice out of this?
For today.
Okay.
That mean we're gonna make a motion to make it 7?
I don't believe you can bring that up for 2 years.
Okay. So where we left off with Pat Henry's suggestions was the bylaw section about his suggestion that it be totally rewritten. And because it was cumbersome, complex, etc. Comments, questions? You've had time to think about this one? Hearing and seeing no comments, then I presume no action.
So Larry,
Yes, sir.
are we going to go through each person's suggestions, or are we one at a time? In other words, like Pat's, and then, because I've got a suggested change to go in this section, but I'd like to do it at the very end.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
The next one was on page 7, section 7. This is action requiring a bylaw. Questions, comments, suggestions? Again, it's a question of the time, how much time is consumed, because 2 public hearings have to be held because of a mere raising of a fine or merging 2 departments into one. Comments?
So
Yeah,
through
yeah,
the chair, so he
Marilyn?
says,
Oh, Andy, go ahead.
so he's saying review, but he's not offering a specific change other than he wants it reviewed.
Right.
Right. I mean, we could say that's not up to us to make those changes. Or was this written for, yes, it was written for transparency and make sure that the public has multiple times to hear and give input on important decisions, albeit raising a fine from $50 to $100 to spend that much time and effort and have public hearings. But one would think that you would combine if you're gonna do, as we've done in the past, increasing fines, you don't do one at a time. You
Right.
combine them and present them at, multiple at the same hearing or hearings.
Yeah,
So,
from what he writes, I certainly agree with his concept. It does seem overly cumbersome.
well, I think he pointed out in prior or some other wording that there were multiple subcommittees that would hear a certain issue and then report back to the town council. And to streamline somehow, the council could do it simultaneously. As an example, when the council was first formed, a new restaurant with a liquor license, the council said they wouldn't entertain a liquor license application until the planning board ruled on a special permit, because he needed that to merely operate. And the council, a few years, probably within the last 2-3 years, said that why can't we just hear them simultaneously and make a decision contingent on the other board approving whether it be the special permit or the liquor license? So can't internally the town council say, don't have one subcommittee review it, wait for that response, then hear that, and then give it out to the other subcommittee? I think that's one way of streamlining. And that's internal. It's not, the charter doesn't change. Any other thoughts? Yes, Ms. Jeannie.
I have a note here that we're to meet with the town manager to ask her opinion. Does anybody else have that note? And I don't know, I think that'd be more with the departments.
Yeah, I know we put that
Table it.
forth a while back, that we were gonna have a session with her at
Yes.
some point.
So,
Yes, section 7, I have that note as well, to ask the town manager.
I do.
and I do remember there was an instance where there was a suggestion of the council meeting at the same time with the planning board on a certain issue, and it was discouraged upon, I believe, by town attorney not to do that.
The current town attorney?
No, the
No.
second to the
Enough,
last
enough
one.
said.
Yeah,
But Jeannie, I think that was there was a specific reason that he didn't want us to meet at the same time with that one.
Okay,
It wasn't in general, it happened to be that petition.
okay.
So
Okay.
Larry, if I can real quick,
Yes, Ralph.
going back to the Charter Commission, we actually created this bylaw specifically for transparency, especially when it came to getting the public's opinion when you're going to be fining them and increasing fees. Our general bylaw has fees in it. And anytime those needed to be changed, it went to the town meeting and there was a list of them. What this is basically saying now is any fees associated with the town should have to go through the town council and create a bylaw, which I think is the right way to do it. That way their specific departments and all aren't allowed to just increase fees on their own. So I like it the way it's written. I think it's done well.
All right, so noted. So I'm presuming no action on that issue, other than we will, when we meet with Mary, we will discuss that particular section as well. The next comment I have is on page 7, section 8, vacancy. and he's pointing to wording in there where he doesn't, the words, the phrase, in addition to the term for which elected, makes no sense and should be deleted. And I have a note
I do too.
that we had, C note on page 8. Help me, people. What do we think about this?
Well, having just gone through that myself, I was selected by the council. I was elected into the vacancy by a vote of the council. And then to fill the remainder of the term, then I had to seek an election before the voters. I mean, that's what I did. That's what it says. And I didn't have any, I'm not seeing what he's concerned about.
I'm not either.
It's the sentence at the top of page 8
Yeah.
that begins, "The candidate elected to an office filled by appointment prior to the election shall be sworn to the office immediately to complete the then unexpired term, in addition to the term for which elected."
Right.
Are we interpreting that to mean that if someone is appointed to fill a vacancy, and let's use, say, March, they would then, and they would immediately be sworn in,
Right.
and it talks about which are elected.
I interpreted that as the council voted. They voted. I mean, yes, it's an appointment, but the vote was to elect for the remainder of that term by the council.
Mhm.
And then it, once, then if you seek election, then it goes on to the rest of it, that you're not a candidate for re-election, you're a new candidate. You're not an incumbent.
So anyone who's selected by the town council to fill that vacancy, and say that was in February, they would serve until July 1st?
No.
No, till the election, the next election, which is,
June, the first week in June.
Right.
Mhm.
But then would continue
Nope.
if they're elected,
Well,
Jeannie?
so Marilyn, you replaced Joe Ford, correct?
Correct.
So when was his term up? Was it up?
In June.
It
So I
happened
served,
to be. What if his term was not until the following year?
Right.
you would still have to go to the election and be
Yeah.
elected for 1 year.
Because then anybody else could take papers out for that particular seat.
Right, for that
Okay.
1
You're
year.
only filling the term until the next election, which would be in June.
So it's not to the end of the term of the person you are,
No,
your seat.
no.
Okay, so what does that term mean then, in addition to the term for which you elected? What does that mean?
I can tell you.
Go
Okay.
Ralph.
Marilyn filled the position in February.
Mhm.
She goes until June, which is the election. From June to July, that month, whoever's elected immediately gets sworn in and fills that month plus their full term. So that way there, when the voters speak on election day,
Yep.
Oh,
whoever they elect is immediately
Yep.
sworn in and
Okay.
takes over.
Then
But
that
the-
should remain.
Marilyn happened to win the seat, so she just kept going.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's
Yeah.
say Connor had won. He would have taken over as of the day of the election. He would have been sworn in, and he would have taken the month of June and then his full 3-year term.
Okay, so that's a different circumstance when a vacancy occurs and someone runs in June. Even if the person appointed had run but loses, then the new person starts immediately rather than waiting till July 1st.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay,
Now,
I didn't read it that way at all.
to try and, if I decide not to run for reelection when my term is up, I still serve until June 30th because I was elected to a 3-year term.
correct.
It's the exact opposite for a vacancy, to Ralph's point.
Okay,
Mm.
okay.
So
I
that
think
phrase
this-
should stay there.
Yes.
I suggest we leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Ralph.
You're welcome.
All right, so unless I see other comments, no action on that suggestion? Next comment is on page 8, section 9, access to information. And this is his concern about getting financial information in a timely and user-friendly format.
The format part seems relatively simple. Everybody's got the same software. Is that what he's getting at?
Well,
Uh,
the question is whether they're not getting it at all, they're getting it not timely, or the format is wrong, or a combination.
Sounds like a combination.
I think it's a combination too.
And my comment that I wrote, shouldn't this be under council rules, internal, rather than the charter?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're not, then the council decides as a group, we want it quicker, we want to impose rules when we get it, how we get it. Comments?
same-
Yes, Bill.
It can depend on the document or the type of information.
Mhm.
All we did
I
was set up
agree.
the process in the charter.
Mhm.
It's up to the council and their rules to determine how it gets disseminated.
Yes, Jeannie.
I think the problem was who was giving the information, that it wasn't coming forth in that kind of a manner. So I think it's more of a unique situation at the time. I understand what he's saying,
Mhm.
that there had been problems in the past, but I think it was from the resource.
Mhm.
I think it'd be a mistake to be too specific.
Oh, I agree.
Anyone
Question.
else?
Yeah, question, Larry.
Yes, Bill.
Does the town council have access to the software that the town employees have? They don't have access to that, do they?
No.
I don't
It's
think
Munis.
so. Say
They
it
don't
again,
have-
Gene?
Do
That's
they have
the mu-
access?
The Munis software, no.
No, so in order for them to get information, they have to rely on someone to give it to them.
If it's financial, yes.
Yeah, and I think that's what he's saying here is that there's nothing in there that's helping them get it in a timely manner.
Well, it should be understood that it should be delivered in a timely manner.
Yeah.
I would say so.
But that's something that would be put into the council rules.
I don't know if it's in there.
Or
Putting
it
in
would be.
Council
it would be-
rules doesn't help.
or it would
Okay,
be-
well, I'm just saying, I don't think it belongs in the charter.
Right. I agree with you.
I
And then-
think maybe, go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, Jeannie.
I was
So
gonna
do-
say, I think what should happen is when any information is requested, that's when you specify how you want it and when you want it. And
Right.
that to me is common sense, sort of.
No, I have a
I
question.
think, go ahead, Phil.
Jeannie, does that go back to what we were talking about where a single council member comes to you and asks something versus the full body asking for that information? Didn't we?
No, I believe this is different.
So a single member can come and ask for financial information, or they have to go through the council to get that information?
What I'm recalling is information was asked at a specific meeting for the next meeting. And it didn't come in a timely manner, or it didn't come in a correct format, and it was difficult to interpret. Marilyn and Ralph, do you agree with me?
I agree. I agree.
Absolutely. Mm.
I got a
And Phil,
question
I
for-
think in the second paragraph in section 9, it gives the authority to the town council to request financial information, and they can ask in what type of format they want. So,
I got a
the
question
powers
for
there.
Jeannie.
what's that?
No, I just had, when you're done, I just had a question for Jeannie.
Go ahead, Andy.
Well, the manager puts out instructions for the budget in December to the department heads. Does she say, we want it in this format?
Everybody's got a template to follow.
Yeah,
So it all arrives in the same format, so it can be, consolidated together.
so could you take that and carry it forward to what's being brought up here?
I don't think so. I think it's apples and oranges. I think it's whenever the council has a question about accounting or, say, capital projects or status reports on the budget, it's random. It's not something that happens all the time, in my experience.
Okay.
Are we good?
Yeah, can we add
Okay.
this to the town manager when we talk to her?
Sure. Sure.
If you-
Let me just write some notes.
There is,
Go
can I
ahead,
add just one more thing?
Go ahead.
I noticed in Pat's comments, he says the pros and cons described. And there's somewhere in the charter that talks about when something's brought forward to the council that should be mentioned. I don't know where it is.
Say that one more time.
In Pat's comments, he talks about the pros and cons should be included
Pros and cons on that issue.
with anything presented to the council, and it's in the charter somewhere, but I don't know where it is. And that's been a problem in the past.
Can you give us an example?
Oh, say a department head wants to come forward with maybe a grant proposal or any kind of proposal. They're supposed to say what the pros and cons are. And it's in here somewhere, but I can't tell you
Yes.
where.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's what Pat's drawing from, is my point, but it's here somewhere. I'll find it.
Okay. Okay. So,
So Larry, I have a question.
uh-huh.
So we're talking about the town council making inquiries into the affairs of the town. One of the things I have a thought about is a subcommittee of the council. When they need information, do they need to go back to the full council and then the full council has to submit a request? I would think the subcommittee, let's say the finance subcommittee of the town council,
Mhm.
should be able to make a request directly to the town manager or the department.
I would, well, you want a response to that?
I
I
would
think-
like one from you.
I think that should go back to the full council. That they decide that that request is appropriate. Because then you have too many loose ends out there and you don't know what direction your subcommittee is going. That's just my 2 cents.
Larry, the other thing that I would mention about that is the subcommittees usually are fact finders. And then once they get the facts, they present it to the full council. and then the council would take a vote. I think that's the reason they're there, because they need time to put all the facts together.
Right.
So Ralph, this subcommittee that we sit on is going to invite and interview the town manager. Should we have asked the full town council whether that's appropriate?
Well, I mean, when I'm reading this, it says the town council may make inquiries,
Right.
but it doesn't include council subcommittees. And I'm specifically thinking for finance. There's a lot of times our finance subcommittee needs information directly from the finance director.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't know for a fact, but I've heard in the past that they've had to use Freedom of Information Act in order to get it.
Right.
I've heard the same thing.
Right.
That's just unacceptable to me.
Right.
I'd like to think that's the exception rather than the rule, though. And
I would
that's
certainly hope so.
I agree with that. I hope so too.
been corrected. And I'd like to think that, good grief, if we have personality differences with whoever's, a department head, and then we have to change the charter to deal with those issues, it's easier to get rid of the department head.
Well, so Ralph, is that a motion?
It's not a motion, it's a question. And again, I think Marilyn's correct. I think we've pretty much fixed it. I mean, the way you read the charter, Larry, would the town council have the authority to, or be able to give the authority to a subcommittee to talk to make inquiries?
That is asking for a legal opinion, really, from the town's lawyer.
Okay.
Whether the town council can delegate that authority given to them under this section, I don't know the answer.
Okay.
But that's something the town council could ask the town's lawyer for an opinion. And not just this issue, but questions, can you delegate authority given like that within the charter?
I think we just witnessed a rarity here.
What's that? Silence?
No, Larry doesn't know the answer.
Well, I do know the answer, but that's calling for a legal opinion.
Right.
And that's not my role here.
So
Okay.
I will
So-
say, I think we're doing a lot better. The farther we go along, I think the charter is working better now than what it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And it just seems like the whole town, all the departments and all are working more towards a common goal, which is great.
Good, that's good to hear. So on his suggestion on the access to information, I'm hearing no motions. And I'm going to presume no action on that, then. Correct?
Yeah, but we're
Yeah,
gonna
and
talk- we're
I
gonna
had a
talk
note for the
to town
moment.
manager.
Yeah, what Phil just said, talk to the town manager.
Yeah.
Okay.
His next suggestion is on residency, on page 9. And we have spoken about whether or not whether to require a town manager to be a resident of town, require that. So we've spoken about this before, and we decided in our prior discussions, we were leaving it as is.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think the part that we left as is was requiring residency or not. We never touched on the move-in part that he's mentioning here.
Uh-huh. Well, we spoke about possibly changing the time period, but since you have the town council can waive
Right.
or extend the time for that requirement, I don't know what changing the time would be. You leave discretion to we spoke about, would this dissuade people who are potential candidates from applying because of this paragraph? And we decided to leave it the way it was.
Larry, question.
Yes, Phil?
We've had 2 town managers and the town council has waived residency for both of them. Is it
Right.
still realistic to think that we're going to have a town manager living in town within 6 months or 18 months since the town council waives this?
Well, I don't know, Phil. Town council changes membership. And it could be people elected who feel that should be a requirement and don't want to waive it. I can't forecast what will happen, but
I'm
go
just,
ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just looking at past history. It
Yeah.
seems like it's just been waived. Same thing with the superintendent of schools. It's been waived. But
Yeah.
then when it comes to the police chief, you got to live in town. I mean, there's something there that we have to explore and in the charter and say yes or no. I think.
Well, I think the commission wanted to give discretion to the town council to make that decision for the town manager, depending on if there was a Jewel out there who lived 5 miles from East Long Meadow, who didn't want to move, could we waive it? You know, you have the counterbalance. I don't know. The commission didn't want to put it in stone. They wanted the best candidate available, and so they wanted some latitude there, town council.
Bill, what about the school committee? Do they have to, and then with a waiving, or is it, that's not even addressed?
If we don't put it into a contract, it's not addressed. We don't have a policy that specifically says the superintendent has to live in town.
And there's
So
no-
it strictly goes by, like, we could rewrite the contract tomorrow and require let's say require the superintendent to move within 6 months. But we don't have a policy that states anywhere that within 6 months or 18 months, you need to move into town unless we waive it. So the answer to that is no.
Okay.
The other thing that I would say in favor of what he's written here is when I was on the search committee and working with the consultant tried to convince the council to drop the residency requirement altogether because it shrinks your pool of candidates. If you put in something like the 18 months, as he suggests, would that be a positive? Would it be maybe raise the pool of candidates, make it more attractive to them to apply, but at the same time keep the council's ability to waive if they so chose?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I know. As you said, different council, Council A might go along with it. Council B wouldn't.
Yeah.
Wouldn't.
Yes, Ralph?
So just to look at some of the people that applied at the last town manager's position, we had a gentleman living in Vermont.
Mhm.
And if we chose to give him the job, I will tell you this, I would not have voted to waive the residency. I think someone living in Vermont needs to change their residency and live here in town. And if you're going to move from Vermont, you're not going to move to Springfield, you're going to move into my town if you're going to be the town manager. That's my feeling. The commute is way too far. Instead, we went with a town manager that doesn't live too far from here. it made no sense to make her pack up and move 5 miles into town. So I think each case is a little bit individual, and having the option to waive it or not waive it or adjust the time frame seems to work.
That's not what this article is about. It's about changing the number of months to move into town.
Yeah, he's extending it.
Right.
I would just leave it alone.
But we have that option to do that.
That's where I would leave it.
To
Is there
change
any
the months.
Absolutely. We can say in in the person's contract that you have 12 months to move in instead of the 6.
Well, the council would have to waive that, right? The
Right.
full vote of the council.
Right.
Do I hear any motion? Seeing none. Any other discussion? No action on that suggestion.
6
Next
minutes
one.
left, Larry.
What's that?
6 minutes left.
Thank you, Doctor. On page 9, section 1, the last paragraph, annual review. It's redundant. He says with page 6, section 5. Okay,
Page 8.
he is correct.
We have a note to ask Mary.
Okay,
Page. Are we on page 9?
Section 1.
Section 1. Okay.
all right, so we're gonna ask Mary on that. What were you asking her?
So
I didn't write it down. I just said ask Mary.
Okay. All
it's
right,
redundant, Larry, because it's in one section, it's under the town council must do it. And in the other, it's under the town manager that there will be an annual review.
Right.
okay. I'm with you, but.
I don't
and the
see any,
note's redundant,
I don't see any problem with the redundancy.
neither do I.
Doesn't-
And
No, I
anyone
don't
have a-
either.
Conflict with each other, so.
Are we okay with that? Okay. No action. And the last one Jeff will take on tonight is page 9, section 2, number 1. And his comment is, this is it. The question of whether town manager appoints and then town council has 45 days to reject, or the reverse. The town manager recommends and it's the town council that appoints. And we discussed this a great deal. So I send it back now, but is there any further discussion on this? Or should we just repeat what we said before?
What did we say before?
What did we say?
Yeah, I don't recall.
That the philosophy of the original commission was to give certain authority to the town manager. And that although it may sound like semantics to have a recommendation to the town council, who then approves, it was decided that the authority should lie with the town manager. There are important roles within the town that the commission felt the elected town council should have some sort of veto power on those important positions. As a result, the ones named, and then there was one added on, the town clerk, subsequent to the charter, when it commenced. And it was left for rejection by the town council rather than the town council be the appointing authority. Comments, questions?
I'm just a little confused as far as hiring someone and then saying to that person, I have to go to the town council and see if they're going to reject this appointment.
Correct?
So I'm looking at it and saying, why would you take a job if you don't know whether you have the job? Because you have to wait up to 45 days for the town council to say, no, we reject you. We don't want you. Versus the other way where the town council says to the person that I'm going to recommend you to be hired because I feel that you're the one for the job. And then you say, okay, you wait for the town council to say, yes, we approve that. And then the person starts knowing that they have the job. That's where I'm confused on why would someone take a position if they don't know whether the town council is going to reject or approve.
Yeah, it seems like that hiring
Yes, Jeff.
process.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Andy.
I was just gonna say, I agree with what Phil just said. It seems like that process should all take place almost simultaneously, a job offer, an approval, or an acceptance rather, and then, the council part. Yeah, the 45 days just seems completely out in left field.
Yes, Jeff?
Yeah, we discussed this before at length. And I believe the way we decided and we left it was that those positions would be presented to the town council, that this is the candidate or so forth that the town manager wanted. And then the town council would either approve or reject it prior to the appointment. That's the notes that I have from when we discussed this originally.
That's not what I have as our conclusion.
Okay,
Our conclusion made no change. We agreed to revisit this, and we're doing that here, but there was no conclusion to give the town council approval of a recommendation, but rather there was no change at this point.
okay.
You know, Larry,
Yes,
in my,
Madam.
in my notes, I have that we're going to ask Mary about this.
Yep.
And then I also wrote that it was on hold. And then
Right.
I put in parentheses, see the motion. The motion is in our minutes. I don't have it in front of me, but it would lead me to whenever we discuss this in the minutes, it would say what the exact motion was for this particular piece.
Right,
So
okay.
it's
So
pending.
we're past time. Yes, Tom?
No. I was just gonna say the 45 days is the absolute maximum. It's or the next regular council meeting, whichever comes first. So
Yep,
you're not sitting on tax for 45 days.
okay.
And
So-
it's sort of all in the wording. Presentation of the name,
Yep,
recommended candidate. It doesn't say that the person signed a contract already.
that's correct.
So you're not talking about being embarrassed and having to fire somebody the next week. You've sort of recommended that this is who you want to appoint. And
Well,
then at the next meeting, if they don't do the roll call vote, then you go ahead.
Tom, it says here, made by the town manager shall become effective unless rejected. So they are signing a contract because it says become effective unless rejected by the majority of the town council members by
Okay.
roll call vote within 45 days. So I think that maybe what we should do is maybe the chair should ask Marilyn to research the minutes
Motion.
we can discuss it next week.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's some weird wording in there. I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll pick it up with this next meeting. Dr. Mackey,
Yes, sir.
December 8th, 4:30?
30 PM.
Okay. Any other urgent business before we ask for a motion to adjourn? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Jeff?
Second,
Ralph, second. All those in favor, Ralph?
yes.
Larry, yes. Jeff, yes.
Yes.
Good. Bill?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Good. All right, good meeting, people. Stay well, and we'll get there.
Hey, thanks.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
All
Take
right.
care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.